So now let's start first with the most common tumor. So what is the most common tumor that we have? That is metastasis. Most common tumor is metastasis. So metastasis usually comes from, it can come from various parts of the body, but most common when we talk about metastasis, metastasis usually comes from lungs. So most common organ to send metastasis to brain is lung. Okay, what are the other organs which can send metastasis to brain? Okay, so remember breast. Okay, breast, skin, especially melanomas. Okay, very notorious. GIT. Okay, and kidney. Okay, in GIT also colon, kidney, and don't forget choriocarcinomas. Don't forget choriocarcinomas. The organ which never sends metastasis to brain is prostate. It is prostate. Okay, so prostate never sends metastasis to brain. Okay, it spreads through vertebral venous plexus, but usually does not enter into the brain parenchyma. So we'll be talking more about it when we study about it and see the images of it. But now we are first going to focus on glioma. So let's clear the basis of gliomas before we go to the detail later on. So you just studied that how many types of gliomas are there? We have three types: astrocytoma, ependymoma, and oligodendroglioma. Isn't it? So astro, ependymoma, and oligodendroglioma. Now we are just going to focus first on astrocytomas. Now astrocytomas are divided into two main categories. So astrocytomas are divided into two main categories. Okay, first, non-infiltrating or very mildly infiltrating, basically non-infiltrating. Majority of the time they're just not infiltrating into the other part of the brain. So non-infiltrating and infiltrating. Okay, so non-infiltrating and infiltrating astrocytomas. So when we talk about non-infiltrating astrocytomas, the major category of tumor that comes here is pilocytic astrocytoma. Okay, pilocytic astrocytoma. Okay, whereas when I talk about infiltrating uh, astrocytoma, here we have three types. Okay, so here we have three types. So normally diffuse infiltrating astrocytomas are there. So we can categorize that is it as diffuse or fibrillary astrocytomas. And then we have anaplastic astrocytomas. And then we have the biggest big boss. Who is the big boss? Glioblastoma. Okay. So glioblastomas. Okay. So when we talk about non-infiltrating, the major category is pilocytic astrocytoma. When we talk about the infiltrating astrocytoma, we have diffuse or fibrillary astrocytoma. Okay, anaplastic and glioblastoma. So these are diffusely infiltrating astrocytomas. Now, remember, God is very kind towards children. Okay, so God never wants any child to have any disease. Okay, so always God wants to protect child. Okay, so that is why most common brain tumor which occurs in children, most common brain tumor which occurs in children is pilocytic astrocytoma. So most common brain tumor which occurs in children is pilocytic astrocytoma. Also, God wants the children tumors to be detected very early. So majority of the children tumor occurs in the posterior fossa. So most common site of pilocytic astrocytoma is cerebellum. Most common site is cerebellum. So remember, most common pediatric astrocytoma is pilocytic, or most common pediatric brain tumor is pilocytic astrocytoma, which is non-infiltrative, doesn't infiltrate into the surrounding part of the brain. Obviously, when it doesn't infiltrate, you just excise. So excision will be curative. Whereas when I talk about infiltrating astrocytoma, just now we have told diffuse, anaplastic, and glioblastoma. So here, the most aggressive brain tumor in an adult is glioblastoma. So glioblastoma can occur in any age group, but usually occurs in adults. And it is a very, very aggressive brain tumor. Okay, so remember, so when I talk about astrocytomas, there are other types of astrocytomas also, but for now you have to remember most common type of astrocytomas, non-infiltrating astrocytoma is pilocytic, infiltrating, most aggressive infiltrating astrocytoma is glioblastoma. Also here remember one point, I told you most common site of pilocytic astrocytoma is cerebellum, but pilocytic astrocytoma can also involve the optic nerves. So optic gliomas are also usually pilocytic astrocytoma. Okay, so optic gliomas are usually pilocytic astrocytoma. So with that basic overview of CNS, now we can progress further into CNS at how we approach the case. Okay, so any case of CNS tumor is coming, how are we going to approach it? The most important point that first we should know is aggressivity. Okay, how aggressive this tumor is going to be. So for that, WHO divided the brain tumors into four grades. WHO divided the brain tumor into four grades: 1, 2, 3, and 4. How many grades? 4 grades. Now, what was the criteria that was used for WHO in division? So remember a very simple and good code. Amen. Okay, so four criterias were used. Okay, A for atypia, M for mitotic activity, E for endothelial proliferation, and N for necrosis. Again, A for atypia, M for mitotic activity, okay, E for endothelial proliferation, and N for necrosis. Now, why did WHO choose these criterias? Okay, see, there is a very simple logic that you have to understand. Whenever a tumor is growing, and is growing rapidly, you should understand it should start making its blood supply also very fast, isn't it? It should start endothelial proliferations very fast. But suppose it is growing much more than the capacity of the blood vessels, then what will happen? It will undergo necrosis. And it indirectly also means that the tumor is very atypical and it has very high mitotic activity. You understand? That is why these four criteria were taken to divide the CNS tumors into four types: 1, 2, 3, and 4. So when all four are present, amen, okay, right? All four are present, or at least three are present. So either three are present or four, all four are present. Then we call as WHO grade 4. Majority of the time, two things which we always see should be present in type 4 is endothelial proliferation and necrosis. So any WHO grade 4 tumor usually has all the four criteria, and endothelial proliferation and necrosis is usual features that are present. Okay, when nothing is present, no amen, okay, then it is called as WHO grade 1. No atypia, no mitotic activity, no endothelial proliferation, and no necrosis. Okay, that is WHO grade 1. Okay, and intermediate we have divided into 2 and 3. So for us, we are more concerned with WHO grade 1 tumor because that's the tumor which is going to have the best prognosis, okay, and responds nicely. And WHO grade 4 tumor, which is a very, very aggressive brain tumor, we have to treat it well. Okay, so that is the first point. Look at what WHO grade of the tumors. Okay, what is the second point? Patient's age. Age is going to give you lots and lots of clue what kind of patient you're dealing with. Okay, see, remember, when I talk about patient's age, okay, so majority I can divide it into tumors which occur in the childhood. Which are the tumors which will occur in children? So whenever I'm talking about that, tumors occurring in childhood, so remember, most common pediatric tumors. What is the most common pediatric tumor? You know already. What is it? Pilocytic astrocytoma. Perfect. So most common pediatric brain tumor is pilocytic astrocytoma. But now, if I change, I say most aggressive childhood tumor. Okay, most aggressive childhood brain tumor, medulloblastoma. So, most aggressive childhood brain tumor is medulloblastoma. So, medulloblastoma is the most aggressive brain tumor in a child. But what is the site? Again, that is also present usually in the posterior fossa in the cerebellum. Pilocytic astrocytoma is also present in the cerebellum. Okay. Apart from that, are there any other tumors which can occur typically in the childhood age? Yes, we have other tumors also which usually occur in the childhood age. The other embryonal tumor. Do you remember which was the other embryonal tumor? Atypical teratoid and rhabdoid tumor. Atypical teratoid and rhabdoid tumor. This tumor also occurs usually in the children, especially less than 3 years of age. Especially less than 3 years of age. That's the typical typical age group that occurs in atypical teratoid or rhabdoid tumor. Apart from that, you should always remember there is a tumor called as midline pontine glioma. Okay, midline pontine glioma. Okay, this usually occurs in children. This also usually occurs in children. Okay, so what have you learned then? What all tumors can occur in children if we are talking about? So most common childhood tumor is pilocytic astrocytoma. Most aggressive brain tumor in child is medulloblastoma. Okay, atypical teratoid or atypical rhabdoid tumor usually occur in very small children less than 3 years of age, and midline pontine granuloma also occurs in children. Okay, then young age, so especially young age, okay, the tumors which occurs in a younger age, so less than 20 years, less than 2 decades, usually we have ependymoma. So ependymoma classically occurs less than 20 years of age. So less than 20 years of age we have ependymoma. So less than 20 years we usually have ependymomas. Okay, of course, remember always ependymoma can occur after 20 years also, and there are definitive predispositions associated with it. But for now, majority of the time, ependymoma can occur, usually occurs in younger age group. Now, glioblastomas can occur in any age group, any age group, and others do not have any particular age group predilection, so they can occur in any age group. We will study as we keep on studying about them. Okay, so this basic first you should remember. Now, once we have known about patient age, then you should know, are there any syndromes? Are there any associated syndromes which typically cause brain tumors? So that is a very, very important point. What are the major nervous system tumor predisposition syndromes that you should know? So starting with first, okay, NF1 and NF2. Okay, so NF1 usually is associated with, you all know, neurofibromas, isn't it? And the product of NF1 is called as neurofibromin. Okay, and it is associated with neurofibroma, that you know. What about in brain? Which tumor is associated with NF1? Optic gliomas. Optic gliomas. I hope you remember we discussed just now about it. So this optic glioma, whenever a person is having optic glioma, has a strong predisposition with NF1. What about NF2? Remember a very simple code. SEM. It is associated with SEM. Vestibular schwannomas. Okay, vestibular schwannomas. Ependymomas. Okay, and meningiomas. Okay, so whenever somebody asks you what NF2 mutations, always remember schwannomas, ependymomas, and meningiomas. So these are usually associated with NF2 mutation, and the syndrome and the protein which is associated here is Merlin. The protein which is associated here is Merlin. So protein of NF1 is neurofibromin. The protein of NF2 is Merlin, and the syndromes associated in the brain, schwannoma, ependymoma, meningioma. With NF1, it is optic glioma. Now, second, you should remember what is the other syndrome which is associated with the CNS. What are the other syndromes which are typically associated with CNS? So never ever forget. So we have Cowden syndrome. Okay, we have Gorlin syndrome. Okay, we have Cowden syndrome. We have Gorlin syndrome. Okay, so Gorlin, do you remember Gorlin? So Gorlin syndrome is very, very typical because it is associated with patch gene mutation. It is associated with mutation of patch gene. This patch gene controls sonic hedgehog pathway. It controls sonic hedgehog pathway. Okay, so this sonic hedgehog pathway is basically helpful in the morphogenesis of the brain. Okay, so whenever we have deletion of patched, then what happens? There'll be nobody to control the sonic hedgehog pathway, and it starts behaving aberrantly. Okay, and it gives rise to medulloblastoma. Which tumor? Medulloblastoma. So medulloblastomas are associated with Gorlin syndromes. They are associated with Gorlin syndrome. Okay, so always remember, when I talk about Gorlin syndrome, what is the other association that occurs with it? basal cell carcinomas. Okay, so Gorlin syndromes usually have multiple basal cell carcinomas associated with medulloblastomas. Now, what are the other syndromes which can be associated with these tumors? Of course, you already know Li-Fraumeni syndrome. Do you remember Li-Fraumeni syndrome? Okay, so what was Li-Fraumeni syndrome? Mutation or deletion of P53. Person is born heterozygous for P53. Okay, so P53 mutations. So this is associated with many tumors, but typically which you should remember, secondary glioblastomas. Secondary glioblastomas. Okay, they are associated with secondary glioblastomas and also can be associated with medulloblastomas. So they are associated with medulloblastomas and secondary glioblastomas. Okay. Then, when I talk about VHL mutations, so I hope you know VHL is present on 3p. Okay, so deletion of VHL, okay, is associated with, remember, hemangioblastoma. Hemangioblastoma, which is a tumor of cerebellum. Okay, usually occurs in the cerebellum. So, deletion of VHL is associated with hemangioblastoma. Okay, hemangioblastoma is a deletion VHL syndrome. Okay, and of course your favorite, what is it? Tuberous sclerosis. Okay, so tuberous sclerosis is associated with a particular tumor in the brain. Okay, what is it called as? SEGA. What is SEGA? Subependymal giant cell astrocytoma. Subependymal giant cell astrocytoma is a typical tumor occurring with tuberous sclerosis. So these are so many syndromes which you studied can have predisposition to brain tumors. Okay, NF1, NF2, P53, Gorlin syndrome, Cowden syndrome, VHL deletion, and tuberous sclerosis. Okay, so Cowden syndrome has lots of polyps in the intestine also, the hematomatous polyp. It is also known as P10 hematoma syndrome. It is also known as P10 hematoma syndrome because there is a deletion of P10 here. Okay, so these are the syndromes associated with brain tumors which everybody should be clear. So are you clear with what all we have studied? So everybody, are you clear? You should be clear of how to approach a case. First, whenever you see a case, first you should know what is the patient's age. Then you should know, is there any syndrome associated with it? And the last, when you do the biopsy, you should know, is it a WHO grade 1, 2, 3 or 4? Which brain tumor is it? So that is how we approach a case of CNS tumors. Okay. So with that, let us start into the details of some of the brain tumors which we have to know. Okay. So now let's start first with the most common CNS tumor. Do you remember which was the most common CNS tumor? Quickly, everybody, what is it? Metastasis, isn't it? So most common CNS tumor was metastasis. Okay, so when we talk about metastasis, we have already started that metastasis is the most common tumor and it comes from the other parts of the body. Okay, now here remember we have two types of metastasis. Okay, one is in the parenchyma of the brain, okay. So this is the most common feature of lung tumor is the most common organ to send metastasis to the brain. Okay, whereas if somebody asks you what is the most common tumor to send metastasis to the interparenchymal metastasis, most common organ to send intraparenchymal metastasis, the answer will again be lung. But if somebody changes the question and somebody asks you which is the most common tumor which sends metastasis to the dura mater, okay, so dura mater or leptomeningeal metastasis is most common with which tumor? Breast carcinoma. Okay, so breast carcinoma, remember, is one such tumor which can even cause solitary dura mater nodule. It can even cause solitary dura mater metastasis. So please remember, breast carcinoma is a typical tumor causing metastasis to the leptomeninges or to the dura mater. Okay. Apart from that, we have already studied what are the other tumors which can send metastasis to the brain. Never forget melanoma. Okay, so in skin, melanoma, colon carcinoma, GIT, and kidney tumors, okay, they can send metastasis. Of course, choreo is never to be forgotten, choriocarcinomas. Now, whenever a person has metastasis, the lesions are always usually multiple. That is when I said solitary dural metastasis is a feature of, it can be seen in breast cancer, okay. So it can cause solitary, but majority of the time all the metastasis including breast causes multiple nodules. It causes formation of multiple nodules, okay. Also, all of you should remember which tumor never grows to the brain. Prostate never ever goes to the brain, okay. So prostate never ever goes to the brain, okay. So are we clear with this basic? So spotter for you all. Diagnosis, okay, what's the diagnosis? Guess. What is it? So what are you seeing here? You're seeing multiple black color nodules. You're seeing multiple black color nodules. Okay. So this is black color and is multiple. So this is a case of metastasis to brain from melanoma. From melanoma. So this is metastasis to brain from melanoma. Okay. So that is metastasis, which is that's the most common brain tumor. Now, let's talk about primary tumor. What do you think is the most common primary tumor of the brain? So, most common primary tumor, if you're talking about single, it's meningioma. Meningioma is the most common primary tumor of the brain. Okay, but glioma as a whole is most common. But when we're talking about a single tumor, most common type of primary CNS tumor or most common type of primary benign CNS tumor, it's meningioma. So let's talk about this tumor. This is called meningioma. Okay, so this is called meningioma. So when we talk about meningioma, name itself is telling you something. Meningioma, that is, this is a benign tumor which arises from meninges. So meningioma. So remember, whenever in life you study about any tumor in the body, first ask yourself, do you know the cause of this tumor? Do you know the etiology of this tumor and origin of this tumor? Okay, so these two questions should immediately come into your mind when you study any tumor. So when I talk about origin, okay, what is the origin of meningioma? So meningioma arises from arachnoid cap cells. So they arise from arachnoid cap cells. So arachnoid cap cells. Okay. Now, what is the cause? What is the etiology? So what are the implicated causes? So remember, if you talk about causes, it could be either a genetic cause where genes are involved, or it can be an acquired cause. Okay, so acquired cause. So we're not talking about sporadic in genes. Majority of the meningiomas are sporadic, and in sporadic also they get deletion of NF2 and inherited. You have just now seen NF2 is associated with, we discussed. What are the three tumors? SEM. What is M? Meningioma. So schwannoma, ependymoma, and meningioma. Okay. And when we talk about acquired, when we talk about the acquired risk factor, never ever forget the most important acquired risk factor for meningioma is radiation. It is radiation. So radiation is one of the most important risk factor for brain tumor. So there was a question in NIMHANS, I remember. They asked which is the most common what is the most common risk factor for brain tumors. So please remember, what will the answer be? Radiation. Okay, so radiation is one of the most important risk factor for meningioma. Okay, now whenever you are talking about radiation, just I'm drawing this box here, can you tell me which all tumors are actually associated with the radiation commonly? So many, but commonly, which you should never ever forget. So first, meningioma you have learned. Second, papillary carcinoma of thyroid in a child. So whenever a child has a papillary carcinoma of thyroid, never forget radiation as a risk factor. Radiation causes it. And the third, of course, leukemias. Of course, leukemias. So whenever we are talking about radiation, remember meningioma, papillary carcinoma of thyroid in a child, and leukemia. So these are the three important radiation causes which you should remember. Okay. So these are the causes, which you should remember, genetic and acquired causes of meningiomas. Okay. Now, once you know this, now next you should know is which grade of tumor it is, isn't it? Which grade of tumor it is. So majority of the time, meningiomas are WHO grade 1 tumors. Okay, that means excision is curative. They do not infiltrate. But please remember, meningiomas can also be WHO grade 2 or WHO grade 3. So they can even be WHO grade 2 or WHO grade 3. Okay, so we have classical meningioma, okay, which is simple. Then we have atypical meningioma, that is second, and then we can have anaplastic meningioma, that is third. Okay, so majority of the time we get a classical meningioma. Majority of the time we get a classical meningioma. Okay, so let's see what is classical meningioma. So in classical meningioma, what do you get? So classical meningioma, just now you have said that this is a tumor arising from the arachnoid cap cell. So you already know that we have three layers, okay, in the meninges, P, A and D. So it arises from the arachnoid cap cells. So obviously the overlying dura mater is intact. So this tumor is usually attached to the dura mater. It is attached to the dura mater. So that is why this is called as dura mater based tumor. It is called as dura mater based tumor because it is attached to the dura mater. Now because it is growing like this, what will happen? So it's growing like this. So it's a dura mater which is preserved and it's growing like this. It's growing like this. So it is growing like this. So it will start pressing upon the brain. So it doesn't usually in the classical type, it does not infiltrate into the brain, but it presses on the brain. Okay. So that is the typical gross image of meningioma. Okay. Starts from the dura base tumor, dura is there and it grows and it presses around the brain below. Okay, so that's the gross image of meningioma. Let's look at the microscopy. So on classical microscopy, remember the meningioma is made up of meningothelial cells. Okay, so they're proliferating meningothelial cells. So these meningothelial cells usually form the whorls. Can you see here? So they can be plump cell, they can be spindle shaped cells, and usually they have a tendency to form whorls. So they are arranged in a whorl like manner. So they have a tendency to form whorls. So individual cell boundaries cannot be seen. Okay, it will appear as if there is a syncytium of cells and they're forming around. Do you know why? Reason. Guess. Any guesses? Think in your mind. You know that? Because meningiomas have desmosomes which attach them tightly. Okay, so there are desmosomes in between the meningioma cells, meningothelial cells, which attach them. So they appear joined together at the end, and when they form whorls, still they appear round only. So what is this? Meningothelial meningioma. Okay, so we have approximately 13 types of meningioma. But for you to remember we have meningothelial types, which is this, fibroblastic type, in which there are very fibrous cells which are there, and the third, pseudomonas type. Let's see the pseudomonas type. Can you see? Pseudomonas type. Okay, so in pseudomonas type, there are lots and lots of pseudoma bodies. Lots and lots of pseudoma body. I hope you know what are pseudoma bodies. Dystrophic calcification. So you take a tree, cut it into half. What is formed is pseudoma body. So it is like this. It's concentric whorls. It is like this. It's like concentric whorls. So this is called as pseudoma body of concentric whorls. So this is pseudomonas type of meningioma. So remember, meningothelial, fibroblastic, pseudomonas, all these are WHO grade 1. That is classical meningioma. WHO grade 2 or atypical meningiomas usually are clear cell type, okay, or they are chordoid type. Okay, so if they ask you, so type 2 meningiomas are usually either clear cell type or chordoid type. That's the type typically seen in atypical meningioma, and they have more mitotic activity. Okay, usually more than 4. That's the mitotic activity seen here. Okay, whereas So whereas classical, if they tell you, so meningothelial, fibroblastic, and pseudomonas are type 1. And the most important risk factor for meningioma is, what is it? Radiation. The most important risk factor is radiation. So can you identify spot? What is this? This is meningioma. Now let me tell you a very classical point about meningioma. Do you know that what is it? The classical point about meningioma is that meningioma cells usually show en masse spread. They can show en masse spread. That is like a plate, like a plaque. So they start involving the dura mater itself. So like this. So they start involving the dura mater. They start spreading like a plate. Okay, so if I'm drawing this, this is the dura mater. They will start spreading like this throughout the dura mater like this. So whenever there is en masse spread, okay, of meningioma, there is a very typical feature that is used to describe. The overlying skull bone becomes very thick. The overlying skull bone becomes very thick, and this feature is called as hyperostosis. What is this feature called as? Hyperostosis. So whenever the cells are showing you en masse spread, whenever the meningioma shows you en masse spread, the overlying skull bone becomes very thick. And what is this called as? Hyperostosis. What is this called as? Hyperostosis. So is everybody clear with this? This is typical features of meningioma that everybody should know. So what is the gene which is associated with meningioma? Can you tell me? Guess. NF2. I know you know it. So this is NF2. So this was the benign tumor of the brain. Okay. Now shall we start with the gliomas, the largest category of brain tumors. So what is the largest category of brain tumors? The largest category. Oh, before going to this, one more point I forgot. I should tell you here itself. So meningioma cells show a very typical IHC positivity, which you should remember. So I hope you know IHC. What do you do in IHC? You take the antibody, okay, against a particular antigen and you tag it with the DAB. Okay, DAB is diaminobenzidine, and you put it. So now when the antigen antibody reaction occurs, there the diaminobenzidine will be deposited. Okay, so that area will turn brown in color. Okay, that area will turn brown in color. Remember, brown color, if it is coming, it is positive. If brown color is not coming, IHC is negative. So that is IHC. So can everybody appreciate this brown color positivity coming in the cells? This positivity is typically called as, this stain is called as EMA. So meningioma cells are usually positive for EMA. Okay, EMA is epithelial membranous antigen. Okay, so that's the antigen, that's the typical marker that comes in meningioma. So meningioma is usually positive for EMA. EMA positive is seen in meningioma. Okay, so now we can start with the largest category of tumor. What is that? And one more. What is this? Spotter. What is this? Do you remember I told you? What did I told you? I told you that, what did I told you? That the why did the meningioma cells have a tendency to form whorls? Because they are joined to each other by desmosomes. So they have intercellular junctions, desmosomes, which can be seen. So if somebody gives you a electron microscopy in brain and say, okay, identify this and tell. So can you see this? So all these are desmosomes. So what are they? They are desmosomes. So desmosomes are attaching, they are showing intercellular adhesion. Typical electron microscopy of meningioma. That's the typical electron microscopy of meningioma. Okay. Now let us start to the most common brain tumors. Okay, that is gliomas. Okay, this you know meningothelial whorl. This is meningothelial variant of meningioma. So now let's start with this. So the largest category of brain tumors are called as astrocytomas. Okay, so largest category of glioma is astrocytoma. I hope you remember and you've not forgotten. Gliomas are of how many types? 3 types: astrocytoma, ependymoma, and oligodendroglioma. So now we are going to focus ourselves just on astrocytoma. So now there is one change that came up in WHO 2016. Okay, so WHO 2016 said that all the astrocytomas and oligodendrogliomas should be considered together. All the astrocytomas and oligodendrogliomas should be considered together because they have a common mutation. And on that common mutation, we should be able to classify them together. So that was the update that came up. Okay, we will apply that update, but after explaining you the astrocytoma and oligodendroglioma, I will tell you how to merge them. But if I tell you right now, then it will be tough for you to understand that. But for now, you should understand we have the WHO has classified all the diffuse astrocytoma, that is infiltrating, all the infiltrating astrocytomas and oligodendrogliomas together on the basis of genetic basis. I will teach you about it after I teach you what type of astrocytomas are there. Okay, so when I talk about astrocytomas, so we all know that there are two types, two broad categories of astrocytoma, which we have already studied. One is non-infiltrating, okay, and the second is infiltrating, diffusely infiltrating. Okay, diffusely infiltrating. So when I talk about non-infiltrating, here comes the first tumor that you should know, that is pilocytic astrocytoma. Which is this tumor? Pilocytic astrocytoma. Okay, so all of you know that pilocytic astrocytoma is a tumor. Now till now, apply your knowledge, is a tumor which occur in children. It usually occurs in the cerebellum. It usually occurs in the cerebellum. So it occurs in a child. It usually occurs in the cerebellum. And in the cerebellum, it appears as a large cystic mass. See, I'll just give you a clue to remember it. See, what is the name of it? Pilocytic. So remember, it is pilocystic tumor. Okay, so pylo because it contains pyloid cells, which we will see later, and it is cystic. It is a cystic tumor. Okay, so pilocystic tumor. Okay, so it's a large cystic tumor which occurs in the cerebellum. Okay, so if this is a cyst, where is the tumor? It contains a small mural nodule. It contains a small mural nodule. Do you understand that? What do you understand by mural? Mural means muscle, and a nodule means nodule in the muscle. Okay, in the wall of the cyst. So this is a large cystic tumor with a mural nodule. Okay, that's the typical gross finding, and this can be seen radiologically. See, this is a child who has a large mass in the cerebellum. As soon as you do the scan, you are able to see a cystic tumor with the mural nodule. Very few differences come in your mind, and you know that probably we are dealing with pilocytic astrocytoma. You understand that? So that is first feature that should come to your mind when we talk about pilocytic astrocytoma. Now, let us look how is this tumor now. Okay, and what is the cause? I tell you, always ask cause. So remember, I tell you, when it is occurring in the cerebellum, and majority of the time it is like this, the most common which is mutation which is associated with pilocytic astrocytoma is BRAF mutation. Okay, it is BRAF mutation. So most common mutation which is associated with pilocytic astrocytoma is BRAF mutation. That's the cause. So what have you learned? It is a tumor of children, occurs in the cerebellum. Most common mutation is BRAF. Presence is a large cystic mass with a mural nodule. Will you remember that? Okay. So now let us see it and know it. See, can you see it? So this tumor is present in the cerebellum as a large cystic mass. Can you see? It's a large cystic mass. And what is present here? There is presence of a mural nodule. Okay, so this is a large cystic mass along with presence of a mural nodule. Okay, so this is typically present in the cerebellum. But if I say it is present in the optic nerve, so what is it called as? Optic glioma. And what is the mutation? NF1. You understand? That is NF1. So large cystic mass with a mural nodule is typical of pilocytic astrocytoma. Now let's see what are you going to see on microscopy. So microscopy is just depictive of what you see in the gross. It shows you two types of areas. Okay, two types of area. It shows you hypocellular and hypercellular areas. It shows you two types of area, hypocellular and hypercellular area. Also, it shows presence of lots of cysts. It shows you lots of cysts because cysts are there. So it shows you lots of cysts. So let's see. So when you put this light under the microscope, as soon as you put, you see that you can see some light areas, some dark areas, and there is lot of cyst formation like areas which are seen. So that is a typical light microscopy of this pilocytic astrocytoma. Now, what cells are constituting? If you want to see the cells individually, remember these cells are called as pyloid cells or bipolar cells. Why bipolar? Because it is like this. The nucleus is present in the center and it has two margins, two ends extending both over. See here? So can you see this? Can you look at focus on this cell and a small nucleus? So this is your bipolar cell. The tumor is made up of lots and lots of bipolar cells. It's made up of bipolar cells. Also remember, I told you that this is a type of a glioma. Okay, so whenever these astrocytes, they undergo some kind of irritation, okay, so they show a very particular characteristic change. Okay, so they, whenever they get irritated, okay, they start collecting heat shock proteins in them. What do they start collecting? Heat shock protein. If somebody specially asks what heat shock protein, heat shock protein number 27. So they start collecting heat shock protein number 27 plus alpha beta crystallin, that is also a component along with it, alpha beta crystallin. Okay, they start collecting heat shock proteins plus alpha beta crystallin together, and this start accumulating. Because it's a protein will usually get a pink color, so this appears like a pink color fiber. It appears like a pink color fiber. So if you look at it, as it will appear as a pink color thread here, so it is like a corkscrew. Okay, it is like a corkscrew or elongated fiber which you can see in the astrocytes. So this is a long corkscrew like thing seen in the astrocytes. Let's see that strikes your eyes. Okay, so majority of the tumor is like made up of two areas, hypo and hypercellular areas. There are lots of cystic areas which you can see, and also you can see lots of pyloid cells, that is bipolar cells, and you see these pink color threads, pink color fibers here. So all these pink color fibers here are what? Rosenthal fibers. So they are called as Rosenthal fibers. So what are they made up of? They are nothing but heat shock protein, okay, and alpha beta crystallin, and this usually is also coupled with ubiquitin. It is usually coupled with ubiquitin. Together they accumulate in the cytoplasm of the astrocytes. Now, spotter for you. Can you identify this corkscrew like structure which you can see here? What is it? It is a typical Rosenthal fiber. So it's always pink color because it's a protein. So strongly stains pink color. And can you see in the background here? There are lots of pyloid cells. Pyloid cells are seen, Rosenthal fibers are seen, cystic hypercellular areas are seen. So your diagnosis in this case will be pilocytic astrocytoma. Okay, and what is the mutation? BRAF mutation. What is the mutation? BRAF mutation. Always remember, what do you remember? Excision is curative. Excision is curative. So which category of tumor it is? Can I say this is WHO category 1 tumor? Yes, that's true. Okay, so pilocytic astrocytoma is WHO category 1 tumor. Prognosis excellent. God never wants any child to die. So the prognosis is going to be excellent. Okay, so that is your non-infiltrating astrocytoma. Now when we are going to talk about infiltrating astrocytoma, so you know we have these three category. Okay, so diffuse, anaplastic, and glioblastoma, isn't it? So in that order, WHO grade 2, WHO grade 3, and WHO grade 4. Okay, so in that order, so when I talk about infiltrating astrocytomas, okay, so they are of three types: diffuse or grade 2, WHO grade 2, anaplastic, WHO grade 3, okay, so this one more is by mistake, and glioblastoma, okay, which is WHO grade 4, So these are infiltrating astrocytomas. Okay. Now, as I told you, what is the change in WHO 2016? According to WHO 2016, infiltrating astrocytomas and oligodendrogliomas are considered together. So remember this point in new WHO, infiltrating astrocytoma and infiltrating oligodendrogliomas are considered together depending upon the mutation that they show. Okay, so but first we should know what mutations are seen in this. So let's understand that, because that's the key of understanding this. So in this, first we will study the most important tumor, that is glioblastoma. That's the most common CNS tumor. But before going to glioblastoma, let's give importance to WHO grade 2 tumor also. So usually there are no much points about WHO grade 2 tumors which are asked, but mostly what they ask you is, there is a variant of WHO grade 2 tumor which is called as gemistocytic astrocytoma. Okay, so this is gemistocytic astrocytoma. I hope you remember when I told you that astrocytomas have, are all the gliomas, in fact all astrocytomas have GFAP positivity, which is very very nice. So astrocytes have a tendency to accumulate GFAP in their cytoplasm. Okay, so they have a tendency to accumulate GFAP in their cytoplasm. So there is one variant when of astrocytoma when this specially occurs. So what occurs here is, in the astrocytes start accumulating GFAP. So GFAP is a protein, so it appears very pink in color. It appears very pink in color, and the nucleus is pushed to one end. The nucleus is usually seen at the other end. Okay, the cytoplasm appears very glossy. Okay, very nicely pink color, and the nucleus is pushed to other end. That is called as gemistocytic astrocytoma. Why it is important? Because of its morphology. Why it's important? Because of its morphology. Because of its morphology. Okay, so this morphology is very very characteristic of gemistocytic astrocytoma. Look at each individual cell. It is like this, with the nucleus pushed to one end, and the cytoplasm is usually pink in color. So what is this called as? Gemistocytic astrocytoma. Why are we interested in knowing that? Because although it is a WHO grade 2 tumor, low grade tumor, but it has worse prognosis. Its prognosis is not good. Why? Because it quickly progresses into anaplastic, and from anaplastic to glioblastoma. So that is why its prognosis is not good. So it's a low grade tumor, but it has poor prognosis. So let's see this question. Can you answer this? So true about gemistocytic astrocytoma is all except. So it's a low grade tumor with poor prognosis. Yes, yes, it's a low grade tumor. It's a true. Low grade tumor with good prognosis? No, it doesn't have a good prognosis. It quickly progresses to glioblastoma. Yes, of course, the histological hallmarks are gemistocytes. Gemistocytes are the cells with abundant eosinophilic cytoplasm and eccentrically placed nucleus. So these are gemistocytes. Do you know what is the closest differential on morphology of gemistocytic astrocytoma? Any guesses? This. Okay, this. Same. Can you see this? This is same, but the cells appear little large. So these cells are appearing large, but the cytoplasm is again very pink. Nucleus is pushed to one end. It has a prominent nucleoli. So what is this tumor called as? Subependymal giant cell astrocytoma. Subependymal giant cell astrocytoma. Of course, when you become an experienced eye, you can differentiate between a gemistocytic astrocytoma, which are gemistocytes are usually small, from these cells, which are usually large. But morphology wise, sometimes it becomes tough to differentiate. And here, what scan helps and the history helps. SAGA is usually a disease which is seen in patients with tuberous sclerosis. It is usually seen in patients with tuberous sclerosis, and the tumor is usually protruding into the ventricle. So scan helps. Okay, so tumor is usually seen protruding into the ventricle. Okay, so that will give you a clue. So whenever you see intraventricular tumor with this morphology and a history of tuberous sclerosis, your answer should be SEGA. Okay, I will not go to markers and all because that is beyond the scope of an undergraduate. For you, at least you should know that it is a tuberous sclerosis. SEGA is seen in tuberous sclerosis. It's an intraventricular tumor and it looks like gemistocyte, but it is larger than the gemistocyte. So when we are considering differentials, let us consider one more differential here. Okay, I hope you remember which was the brain tumor which was showing you a large cyst with a mural nodule. What was the differential? Yes, the answer was, what was it? The answer was pilocytic astrocytoma. It's a large cystic tumor with a mural nodule. Exactly same morphology on scans. Okay, so when a radiologist see exactly same scan report is seen with another tumor which occurs in the cerebellum, this is Hemangioblastoma. That's another familial syndrome. So this is SEGA, which we have seen. It's seen with tuberous sclerosis, isn't it? So the main differential diagnosis that we should consider when we have a tumor in the posterior fossa, that was pilocytic astrocytoma. The another tumor that we have to consider in the same location is hemangioblastoma. So what is this tumor called as? Hemangioblastoma. So this tumor occurs because of mutation of VHL gene. I hope you remember. So remember always, whenever a person has hypoxia, so hypoxia will induce a factor called as HIF1 alpha. Okay, so this HIF1 alpha will go and induce VEGF that will start causing angiogenesis. You understand? Now, as soon as the oxygen levels become normal, our body induces a gene. This is a tumor suppressor gene called VHL gene. This VHL gene, what will it do? It will go and degrade HIF1 alpha. And angiogenesis will stop. Now imagine if VHL gene is deleted. Then what will happen if VHL gene is deleted? There will be nobody to control angiogenesis. So therefore, whenever we are seeing this tumor in the brain which occurs due to VHL deletion, this tumor shows you lots and lots of angiogenesis. It shows you lots and lots of angiogenesis. So that's the point of difference. Now what do you see here? You see here the clear foamy cells. Can you everybody appreciate? All these cells here are foamy cells. So these foamy cells are separated by lot of vessels, that is lot of angiogenesis. So foamy cells with lot of angiogenic vessels in between, you should start thinking of hemangioblastoma. So please remember, hemangioblastoma is again a large cystic tumor with a mural nodule. If you are still doubtful, not able to understand, you want to confirm, put an IHC. This is positive for inhibin alpha. Okay, so the marker of choice for hemangioblastoma is inhibin alpha. That's the marker that's going to put you in, that it's going to take your diagnosis further. Is everybody clear with this? So that is hemangioblastoma.